This chilling yet entirely true story began on a quiet morning in early October 2008 in Brussels, Belgium. When the parents of a 20-year-old student known as AJ entered their son's bedroom, they were horrified to find him cold, cyanotic, and no longer breathing. If we go back exactly 10 hours before that fateful moment, AJ was still a vibrant young man. The previous evening, he had taken a leftover plate of spaghetti with tomato sauce, reheated it, and ate it with gusto before heading out for a workout with friends. But just 30 minutes after the food hit his stomach, a violent storm erupted without warning. He rushed home, clutching his abdomen in agonizing cramps, followed by bouts of projectile vomiting, expelling a thick, mucousy clear fluid that, strangely, lacked the typical acidity of gastric juice. This was accompanied by profuse, watery diarrhea that rapidly drained the young man's vitality. Had emergency physicians been on the scene, they would have immediately diagnosed him with acute enteritis or severe gastrointestinal infection. The tragic truth, however, is that AJ never sought medical help. He simply took a few sips of water and went to sleep, naively believing his youthful resilience would easily overcome a simple case of food poisoning. He had no idea he was facing one of the most ruthless biological weapons in the natural world. How did a healthy, active college student end up at death's door over a small plate of leftovers? To find the root of this tragedy, we must look back 5 days before that fateful night. AJ was a student with a hectic lifestyle, always looking to optimize his academic and athletic schedule. He practiced a habit common among modern youth, meal prepping for the entire week. On that day, he boiled a large pot of spaghetti, mixed it with canned tomato sauce, ate a portion, and casually left the rest sitting on the kitchen counter at room temperature. That plate of pasta sat there quietly for 5 consecutive days. The Codex Alimentarius, the International Food Standards Commission, has repeatedly emphasized in global forums that storing cooked food at room temperature is an open invitation for disaster. We can certainly sympathize with AJ's mindset. To many busy, inexperienced young people, the microwave is viewed as a magic bullet for hygiene. He was convinced that the high-frequency waves, capable of making water boil from within, would incinerate and sanitize any bacteria or mold. This complacency, combined with a desire to not waste food and a blind faith in the absolute power of heat, inadvertently created the perfect incubator for a silent killer, an ancient bacterial strain with defensive capabilities far beyond what most students understand. The battle for survival inside AJ's body began the moment those enticing noodles passed his throat. Minute by minute, his stomach cramped in desperate waves, attempting to reverse the digestive process to expel the potent toxin. This continuous vomiting was the autonomic nervous system's most sacred and powerful defensive effort to save his life. Simultaneously, the small and large intestines joined the protest with massive fluid secretion, creating acute diarrhea intended to flush out the pathogens clinging to the delicate mucosal lining. His body was screaming code red on every front, but his tendency to downplay the symptoms and self-diagnose masked the true severity of the crisis. The 20-year-old was adamant about not calling an ambulance, certain that these symptoms would pass just like any other bout of indigestion. He remained unaware that the horrific nausea was not merely a localized gastric irritation, it was the result of billions of microscopic toxin molecules leaching directly into his bloodstream. These toxins were bypassing his protective barriers, strangling his central nervous system, and preparing to deliver a ruthless finishing blow to his most essential internal organs. As he closed his eyes to drift off, his liver began to disintegrate from the inside out, and his circulatory system suffered a catastrophic chain reaction, forcing his young heart to surrender and quietly stop beating around 4:01 a.m. The Lancet has published clinical studies detailing how biological toxins, when flooding the circulatory system, can trigger systemic inflammatory response syndrome, SIRS, leading to irreversible septic shock and multi-organ failure within a few short hours. How did forensic scientists manage to find the true culprit hiding in the shadows? This shocking case study was officially published and meticulously archived in the Journal of Clinical Microbiology in 2011. drawing the attention of the global medical community at international forensic conferences. During the autopsy performed a few days later, forensic experts had to undergo a rigorous process of diagnosis by exclusion. They began by investigating whether AJ had accidentally used illicit substances that caused sudden death, or if he suffered from myocarditis. However, all standard toxicology tests came back negative. There were no signs of infarction or characteristic bacterial infections in the brain or heart chambers. The mystery reached a fever pitch when investigators turned their scalpels toward the abdominal cavity. There, a gruesome scene awaited them, evidence of unprecedented devastation. The victim's adrenal glands had completely hemorrhaged. His lungs were heavily congested with blood due to acute circulatory collapse. And the most horrifying discovery was the liver. Under the light microscope, pathologists discovered extensive centrilobular liver necrosis. To understand the gravity of this term, necrosis means death. Millions of liver cells at the center of the lobules had died simultaneously, decomposing and disintegrating from within, despite the absence of white blood cells typically found in standard infections. This strange, silent, and destructive injury led to a definitive conclusion. It wasn't the bacteria directly eating the liver, but a potent biological toxin that had launched a massive assault on the circulatory system. What fateful detail allowed scientists to crack this medical cold case? All investigative eyes turned toward the half-eaten plate of spaghetti and the jar of tomato sauce still sitting on the victim's kitchen shelf. When these leftover samples were carefully packaged and sent to the National Reference Laboratory for Foodborne Outbreaks in Belgium, top microbiologists found the golden key to the tragedy. Modern molecular biological analysis revealed a massive presence of the bacterium Bacillus cereus hiding deep within every strand of spaghetti. Even more terrifying, quantitative toxin analysis detected a staggering level of biotoxins, 14.8 micrograms per gram of food. At the European Congress of Clinical Microbiology, experts confirmed that this was a concentration rarely seen in modern medical history. To visualize the horror of this number, one must compare it to a previously reported case of fulminant liver failure in a Swiss boy, published in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine in 1997, where the toxin level was only 1.6 micrograms. The toxin content in AJ's spaghetti was nearly 10 times higher than that classic case. Polymerase chain reaction, PCR. Systems confirmed that the genetic sequences encoding the lethal toxin had been fully activated by the bacteria, while the food was left forgotten at room temperature. The truth was laid bare. The silent killer that took the life of the young student was none other than Bacillus cereus and its specific toxin, creating a notorious obsession in the food safety industry known as fried rice syndrome. Let us venture into the microscopic world to witness the devastating destruction of Bacillus cereus. Unlike common bacteria that are easily destroyed by heat, this bacillus possesses an ultimate survival armor called spores. These spores are so structurally resilient that they can survive unscathed even if you boil food at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 212 degrees F, for 30 continuous minutes. When AJ's spaghetti was allowed to cool and sit at room temperature for 5 long days, the abundant starch combined with the ideal temperature range of 5 degrees C to 60 degrees F, 41 degrees F to 140 degrees F, inadvertently woke these spores from their hibernation. They began to multiply exponentially, continuously secreting an extremely potent emetic toxin known scientifically as cereulide. The most terrifying aspect, and the Achilles heel of this entire story, is that cereulide possesses a very unique chemical structure. The National Institutes of Health, NIH, has published biochemical evidence confirming that cereulide is a ring-shaped peptide that is incredibly chemically stable. It is completely resistant to the corrosive environment of stomach acid, and crucially, is never decomposed by the heat generated in a microwave. When AJ put his plate in the microwave to reheat it, he was merely heating the food. He was not destroying or neutralizing the lethal poison that had permeated every starch molecule. Once cereulide successfully enters the bloodstream, it acts as a brutal ionophore, specifically targeting the mitochondria. the power plants essential for the survival of every cell in the human body. Biochemical analysis reports from the International Congress of Toxicology explain that this toxin punctures the protective membranes of these energy plants, causing a massive leakage of potassium ions. This causes the membrane potential to collapse and halts cellular energy synthesis immediately. The hepatic epithelial cells, the liver's detoxification center, and its most energy-demanding units, suddenly have their power supply cut off. The liver cells fall into a state of mass starvation, leading to an irreversible chain reaction collapse. Toxic acids flood the blood, suffocating internal organs and forcing the heart to beat frantically to pump blood until it too reaches exhaustion and stops forever in the silence. If time could be reversed and AJ had been rushed to the hospital in time, could doctors have performed a miracle? The answer is possibly. In cases of ultra-urgent cereulide poisoning, tertiary hospitals must activate a maximum level intensive care unit (ICU) protocol. At sessions of the International Symposium on Intensive Care and Emergency Medicine, leading experts emphasize that patients need immediate central venous access for antibiotics and aggressive fluid resuscitation with liters of normal saline, sodium chloride, to dilute the concentrated toxins in the blood and replace the massive fluid loss from vomiting and diarrhea. Gastroenterologists and toxicologists would race against time to perform continuous renal replacement therapy, CRRT, to replace failing liver and kidney functions and clear the toxins, while applying the most advanced mechanical ventilation and extracorporeal circulation support. However, according to official medical literature from the World Health Organization, WHO, and risk assessment reports from the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, once this heat-stable toxin has reached a sufficient dose and caused large-scale acute liver necrosis, the survival rate is heartbreakingly slim. In such fulminant cases, an emergency liver transplant is often considered the only glimmer of hope for survival, though the waiting period for an organ donor is a life-and-death riddle with no easy solution. Tragically, for the 20-year-old Belgian student, all those advanced medical opportunities were permanently closed when he chose to fight it alone at home, leading to a sorrowful death that remains a cautionary obsession for the global preventive medicine community. From the devastating tragedy of AJ, the medical world has continuously sounded urgent alarms to protect human life right within the family kitchen. Based on solid epidemiological evidence, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and various international health ministries have issued strict recommendations. The first and most decisive life-saving lesson is the 2-hour rule. Experts strictly forbid leaving cooked food, especially starch-rich foods like rice, pasta, or noodles, at room temperature for more than 2 hours. Furthermore, if the ambient temperature exceeds 32 degrees, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, this safety window must be shortened to just 1 hour. We must wake up from the illusion that reheating food in the microwave or reboiling it solves the problem. High temperatures only kill living bacteria. They are completely powerless against the ultra-resilient cereulide toxin already accumulated in the food. Never gamble your priceless life or the lives of your loved ones over a desire to not waste leftovers. Proactively portioning meals, refrigerating them immediately below 4 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees F, after a meal, and boldly discarding items left on the counter past the safety window is the only defense to stop fried rice syndrome. Thank you for following this cautionary medical story. I hope you always stay healthy and safe in your daily life.